Good morning, everybody. In a recent video, you may recall that I asked and questioned and queried and pondered over why is it, or why was it, that Judge Patrick Willis seemed so subservient to Ken Kratz, Norm Garn and Tom Fallon. And I speculated, was it anything to do with the fact that Ken Kratz was the chairperson of the Crime Victims' Rights Board? Had Patrick Willis ever been a person of interest to the crime board? So I asked various people and got a reply back from one very prominent lawyer in this case, who has written an excellent book questioning the misperception that everything is rosy in the legal system. I think you can judge for yourself who that was. As I said, it's always struck a lot of us how at the end when he's summing up, and Patrick Willis describes Stephen Avery as the most dangerous person ever to enter his courtroom. You'll remember that Patrick Willis agrees to the EDTA testing that the state want. The state seem to get everything that they want. Very rarely do Strang and Buting get what they want. Not least, of course, the business of who deleted the voicemails. Ken Kratz tried to get that conversation shut down, and Judge Willis completely ridiculous decision that he didn't see any evidentiary value in looking at who had deleted the voicemails. So as I say, that was a concern, a query of a lot of ours. It was pointed out to me in an email. All you need to remember, I'm going to paraphrase, I'm not going to use the words that were sent in the email. I'm going to paraphrase and say, basically, Patrick Willis looks after Patrick Willis. Judges are, I was forgetting all along, over there in America, judges have to be re-elected, and Patrick Willis simply wanted to be re-elected. For people outside of America, this seems, certainly this side of the Atlantic, that seems very strange. The notion is that no matter how old you are, what sex you are, what race you are, what your political persuasion is, if you're the best person for the job, you should do the job. There shouldn't be any voting on this. It should be the best people that go forward. But I suppose it's a little bit like here in the borders, we have a term, it's I been, which means that because it's always been that way, it's going to be difficult to replace it. So you have to just try and make do with the best that you can in those situations. But as I say, it does cause concern in that, as I say, because I was basically told, Patrick Willis, he's looking after himself. He's looking after number one. He wants re-elected. He's not going to go against the state. He's going to give the state prosecutors as wide a berth as they need. And of course, the fact is that then that is reciprocated down to law enforcement. The attorneys allow law enforcement to do what the hell they want. So I think that's kind of cleared that up for me. That seems like definitely the most logical explanation of the antics of Judge Willis. So quickly moving on to the main subject today, I found this email. This is the first email that Ken Kratz sent to Thomas Fallon, somebody called Dave W, somebody called Eric, somebody called Dave P. These are all members of obviously the Wisconsin DOJ, with Tom Fallis being the Assistant Attorney General. And remember that J.B. Holland at that time is the Attorney General. So anyway, I'm gonna read the letter for you to sit back and enjoy and have a or not enjoy as often the case may be. So here we go. Here's Ken Kratz talking to all these people. Notice the subject. The subject of this email is, how can we thank Ken for his service to DOJ and crime victims? He writes, for 25 years, this is a worn-out record, Ken, I have dedicated myself not only to my job, but to help my fellow prosecutors, including doing various trainings for DOJ. I have been the single most zealous advocate of crime victim rights, having literally drafted CH 950 as part of the Crime Victims Council. I was appointed the very first and only chairman of the Crime Victims Rights Board, have presided over and decided every complaint a crime victim has made since 1998, having spoken at national conferences on victims' rights issues. I have assisted my fellow DAs and DOJ in accepting high-profile, complex criminal prosecutions that not only required me to devote time and effort, but to still do all my cases in my home county. I don't have to name these cases. You, my friends, know that no other DA in the state has been as willing to help my brothers and sisters in the prosecution community. He certainly likes to lord it up, doesn't he? He likes to lord it up. Let's come down a bit. Here we go. Yes, so, next paragraph. So, if an embarrassing or potentially uncomfortable situation came to the attention of those very people I have worked so hard to help over 25 years, he puts in brackets J.B. Van Hollen, Kevin Porter, Ray Court, close brackets, which involved me, how would I be treated by my colleagues? Question mark. He then writes, I am embarrassed to disclose to my friends that several weeks ago I met a young domestic abuse victim, 25, who engaged in some mild flirtation during our professional contacts. That flirtation prompted me to send a text message to the young single woman asking if she would like to pursue a more personal relationship at some point. I made it clear that it would be after the criminal case. I don't think you did, Ken. I don't think you did that at all. For which she may be a witness, was concluded. That it was completely up to her if we even communicated in the future. No vulgarity was used and no sexual behaviour was suggested. And no additional personal contact of any type occurred other than the texts. However, I knew that my texting back and forth with her was not appropriate, since the case was still open. Finally, having told everybody that, he's this wonderful person and he deserves to be treated so well, and that it wasn't his fault, that it was the flirtation from Stephanie, but finally admitted that he realised that he'd done wrong. This woman decided to report these text messages to the Kaukauna Police Department, who performed a criminal investigation. They asked for the assistance of DCI, and Pete Thielen was assigned the investigation from the Appleton office. With the direction of Ray Court, at least, and I assume Kevin Potter, they completed their investigation and forwarded the results to DOJ. No criminal behaviour occurred, not even close! Exclamation mark. Despite that conclusion, this potentially embarrassing event caused Ray and Kevin to call me, and we jointly agreed that I should relinquish prosecution authority of the case to avoid the appearance of any conflict. Assurances were made to me that DOJ had no interest in making any of this public. I foolishly thought my prosecution brethren at the Department of Justice would admonish my poor decision and allow everyone involved to move on with their careers. I was astounded to hear then, to then hear Roy and Kevin suggest that my texting this woman now called into question my ability to serve as chairman of the Crime Victim Rights Board and suggested my resignation was warranted. What? Question mark? No crime, no Chapter 950 victim violation, and no identifiable SCR violation, but due to the embarrassment this would cause, presumably to the Wisconsin District Attorneys Association and the Department of Justice, if this ever became public, the best course was for me to be removed from the board. Since Department of Justice Criminal Litigation and Legal Services does not determine who serves on the Crime Victim Rights Board, and by design is supposed to have no influence on the board whatsoever, I disagreed with their conclusion. A number of emails have exchanged since that suggestion was made to me. I have enclosed the text messages with Stephanie for your review. I have enclosed every email with Department of Justice so you can read for yourselves what your department wishes to do with me. So I should explain. This is right in the middle of Department of Justice, Kevin Potter corresponding with Ken. This is Ken trying to do a backdoor appeal to Tom Fallon to try and shut this down. It's quite clear. There's no ambiguity here. I have enclosed every email with DOJ so you can read for yourself what your department wishes to do with me. Bottom line, depending on what decisions I make, which should read, if I agree to resign my position as chair of the Crime Victims' Rights Board, it may be necessary to disclose information about your interactions with the woman to the Wisconsin District Attorney Association Board, which should read, again, if you do not bow to our will, we will make this public with your peers. We'll likely go public in the media, and that will forever tarnish what you've built as a career prosecutor reputation. Oh, poor Ken. Let's quickly move on. Well, you say that can't be. Why would the very department that you have supported for 25 years throw you under the bus? Oh, it gets better. Mr. Potter then starts getting upset with my tone in my responses and finally comes right out and threatens that how we proceed with what we perceive to be ethical violations depends on how you intend to proceed. Did I just read that? If I do not resign, DOJ will file an OLR complaint, but that requires an identifiable OLR type violation, right? So I asked DOJ to identify the violation, not what could have happened, but what violation did I commit. Mr. Potter, Mr. Court and Mr. Tafora, note in brackets, note when he starts to get involved, close brackets, have not identified a violation, probably because sexual contact intercourse is prohibited by the rules, but text messaging telling a woman I think she is pretty is not. So I had the nerve to ask DOJ what authority they had to disclose this stuff to the Crime Victims' Rights Board and to the Wisconsin District Attorneys Association. Their final response, they intend to make this public now. They intend to tell my peers on the Wisconsin District Association Executive Board of this indiscretion. Despite the lack of legal authority to do so, Mr. Potter cites his department's duty to the maintenance of public confidence as his reason to go public. As a final professional sledgehammer, due to the counterproductive posture I have taken, daring to resist these heavy-handed tactics, DOJ has now decided to report me to OLR. No violation can yet be identified, but that seems to no longer be a requirement to make an OLR complaint. You will see that Department of Justice is willing to have me provide no more assistance on the Avery Dassey cases due to their department's embarrassment of working with me due to my treatment of victims. They are willing to have me provide no more trainings to prosecutors or cops on their behalf. They are willing to sacrifice my talents on the Crime Victims' Rights Board. And this management team is willing to treat me this way, despite my professional reputation or accomplishments for 25 years. I have no problem speaking with Mr. Court, especially about what resources he is now prepared to devote to the Avery Dassey case in my absence. Mr. Potter, Mr. Tafora or Mr. Van Hollen, who must have sanctioned this course of conduct since the others can't even use the bathroom without his permission. I'm sorry to inform you of this. I am embarrassed at my poor decision to text a young woman before a case was concluded. He's embarrassed about the fact that he contacted before it was closed, not about the contact. Okay, carry on. This will become personally and professionally hurtful to me and my family when the DOJ management team makes it public. Mostly, I am devastated by how this has been handled by my management colleagues at DOJ. Your friend. What a load of ruffle. Ken, you are a sicko. You were found out. Just accept it. But no, see how he's trying to manipulate everybody by saying it's not his fault. He was, Stephanie was being flirtatious with him, and he's trying everything he possibly can to, I believe, to prevent them investigating further and finding out more, because he knows perfectly well about the attacks on 15 other women. This is why he needs to keep this quiet. He is desperate to keep this quiet. Thankfully, as we'll discover, as we look through more and more of these emails, that is going to be that is not what happened. And to anybody questioning about continuing doing this stuff, let me tell you, guilters lined themselves up behind Ken Kratz. He is their iconic spokesperson. We need to know the character of Ken Kratz. Despite anything that Stephen Avery might have actually done in the past, which we know of, which he admitted to, none of it is as bad as what Ken Kratz engaged in. And remember, folks, he is the one that has attempted to bury 2 innocent people alive. I have no sympathy for Ken Kratz whatsoever. His day of reckoning will surely be coming soon. That's all I have time for now. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.